All right, so thank you so much for meeting with me today, Jason.
It's good to be here.
Would you like to, or I guess, start out by telling us your name and then what is your job title?
Sure. My name is Jason Howell. I'm a person in long-term recovery from both mental health and substance use issues. I am the executive director of Soberhood. Soberhood administers several statewide programs here in Texas. One is the Texas Recovery-Oriented Housing Network. We are the certifying body of recovery houses across the state and the state affiliate of the National Alliance for Recovery Residences. And then the other statewide network that we administer is called Recovery People. And Recovery People is organizing and mobilizing peers in recovery. And the primary way that we're doing that is through peer workforce and leadership development.
Okay, thank you. What is your educational or experience background, and what credentials are typically required for positions like yours, or are any licenses required for positions like yours?
Well, like many people, I took a meandering path. So I have an undergrad in agriculture, a master's in business, took a jaunt through, I worked for Big Pharma. I was a sales rep for Big Pharma, then became a massage therapist and holistic energy worker, only to open a .com that .bombed.
Uh-huh.
And then I got into the recovery world. And I think that from a credentialing standpoint within recovery services, I'm a peer support specialist and also an approved trainer here in the state of Texas. So lots of education, not necessarily, needed to be in the position that I'm in. I think that the education, the MBA really helped a lot with being an executive director. You end up having to administer grants and kind of there's a lot of business acumen stuff, administrative. It's not the cool stuff, but it's the stuff that is required to keep a nonprofit going.
Okay. Why did you choose to go into the behavioral health field, or in your case, recovery field? And what drove you to your specific subfield?
Well, I think for me, it's a part of my own recovery journey. If you would ask me, years ago, whether I would want to be in the behavioral health field, it wouldn't have crossed my mind. Even when I worked for Big Pharma, I was actually known as Mr. Prozac in Texas, or at least for about a fourth of Texas. I didn't start out selling a Prozac, but as I started getting advancement in that company, I was promoted as what they call the neuroscience rep, or the mental health specialist. And so that was kind of my first, entrance into the whole mental health and behavioral health world. And I learned a lot about myself, as well as the different medications, as well as kind of, what's going on in the brain with different mental health issues. And so that's kind of was where I started. And then of course I had this meandering path, and then came to recovery, and it all started kind of making sense. And so supporting my own recovery, a big part of that is purpose. And, what do I want to do with my time on this earth? And for me, it is helping more people get into recovery. And that's why I founded the nonprofit Soberhood, and doing the work that I'm doing today.
All right. And what does that work look like? What's your average work day or work week look like? Is there such a thing?
Thank goodness it varies, because I like variety. For me, it allows me to fulfill that entrepreneurial spirit that I have, because a lot of it is around business development and looking at, so if we want to look at peer workforce development in the state of Texas from a meta level, from a macro level, what are the things that we need to be doing to support that? If we want to organize and mobilize peers in the state of Texas, what does that look like? And so I really like challenges, and I like being creative, and I like developing service models and business models. And so this position helps me do that. And another big part of my job is writing grants, reading grant opportunities. And then once you get grants, it's about making sure that you have the right process in place to meet those objectives, and then writing reports. I could complain about writing all the reports, but really it gives you an opportunity to reflect on what you're doing. And then we work a lot with peer advisory committees to kind of help steer us towards optimizing, what we're doing. People ask me how I've learned to write grants, and when I was a kid, I was a member of 4-H, which is a youth organization, primarily with agricultural kids, but we had to write 4-H record books every year, and I did not like writing 4-H record books as a kid, but it absolutely gave me skill sets that I use in grant writing today.
Excellent. 4-H prepared you well.
That's right.
So what kind of people do you work with? What are your coworkers like? What kind of clients or partnering agencies or that kind of thing do you work with? What are the people like?
Well, since Soberhood is a recovery community organization, which means it's a peer-led nonprofit, my employees and most of my coworkers and even my board are all persons in recovery. And that's really nice for me because we have a language of recovery that we can talk about. We need to develop resiliency and do a lot of self-care as persons in recovery. And so it's really great to be able to have that language and that license to be able to talk about that in the workplace. It's very different than the workplaces that I was in before, where it was almost, it was discouraged, quite frankly. And then the stakeholders, it's really important to engage a really broad set of stakeholders that may look like our government partners, that may look like, other organizations within the behavioral health field, or more specifically in the recovery field. But developing and networking is a big part of what I do as well.
And I just want to point out, you probably don't have anyone in your line of work who you would call a client, right? This is all peer to peer.
Yeah. So I think I think it's useful to always think that you have a customer, so to speak, but I don't have patients or clients. So
right.
We're not a direct service provider. At one time, originally Soberhood opened to open sober houses. We opened the first gay men sober home in the state of Texas, and so at that time we had residents, and so that would be kind of the equivalent of a client. But in order to become the statewide certifying body of recovery homes, we had to foster out our homes, and so we no longer, since 2011, we've no longer provided direct care services like that. Now we do do a lot of trainings, and so in a sense, those are our customers more than clients. And we're going to have a Recovery Capital Conference in September, and so we hope to have lots of attendees, lots of participants. And so from a business, I'm putting on kind of my business acumen hat. I do think of those individuals as customers because if they're not happy and satisfied, we're not doing our job right.
Right. Okay. What do you wish more people knew about your job?
Wow. I think that because we're more of an infrastructure company, a nonprofit. In other words, we're not providing direct care. We're actually helping build the infrastructure. We're building the support, whether it be training or technical assistance, to grow out the movement that this role is important. I mean, if it wasn't for organizations that are kind of growing out this role, organizing people to be advocates, helping them understand, helping peers understand the world around them so that they can, inform their own opinion and their own advocacy agenda. Without organizations like this, it doesn't happen. And so I think sometimes because we're not a direct service provider, people don't value us the same way they would if we were providing counseling or recovery housing or treatment of some sort.
Right, but that meta level is equally as important.
I was at an insurance conference probably about maybe a month ago, and they were talking about the importance and the cost savings of having peers and family members on their patient advisory board. And the question becomes, so you can find a family member or a person in recovery to be on the advisory board, but if you don't build their capacity, they're not very effective. And so it's organizations like mine that helps strengthen their voice, so when they're at the table, they can be more effective partners.
Excellent. So what are some of the misunderstandings about your job or about your population that you'd like to clear up?
I wish somebody had told me how hard running a nonprofit was once upon a time. I think that I live in Austin, Texas, and somebody told me one time that there are more nonprofits per capita in Austin, Texas than anywhere else. And I don't know if that's true or somebody that was just kind of venting. But, so many people open up a nonprofit because they have the heart and the passion and they want to help, which is good. That's very much needed. But there's this whole administrative side to it that maybe is not as fun or has all the glory, but it's an important part of sustainability for a nonprofit. And as far as the population that I serve, I think that one of the biggest challenges is that people don't understand that, one, addiction is a disease. It's a chronic illness and should be treated like any other chronic illness and not carry the shame and stigma that it does. Governor Abbott here in Texas just vetoed some bills, and the justification that he gave is that it would be letting habitual drug addicts off the hook, or I'm misquoting him, but essentially that was it. And it's like habitual drug addicts, yes, these are individuals with the disease of addiction. And so why aren't we supporting them just like we would with someone that had diabetes or cancer or asthma? That's where we need to go with this. And I think the other example I'll give, I do a lot of speaking on the national level around recovery housing and housing choice. So as a person in recovery from substance use, and if we believe that recovery is a person-driven process, a person-centered process, then we should support their choices around housing. And currently, if an individual is going to use public housing dollars, they're really being driven to one choice. It's called housing first, which in our perspective, we would call that like wet housing. So a lot of people are allowed to use while they're in that housing kind of community. And that may be the perfect place for somebody without a substance use issue, but for someone with a substance use issue, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to gain any abstinence time or recovery time when you're living with people who are surrounded, who are using around you. And one of the things that I find with the homeless advocates, and there are some really passionate and amazing people out there, is they don't necessarily understand that recovery is a reality. Recovery happens, and it can happen for many people. And so if an organization doesn't hold that hope for an individual that they serve, they probably are not going to hold that hope for themselves. I heard a caseworker, I read a caseworker's quote one time saying the person that she was working with it's not that they want to be homeless. It's just that they don't think that there's anything beyond that. So it's really important for us to instill that hope, and provide people the support that they need in order to achieve recovery. And there's no one better than a peer, someone who's been in that place, that can help instill that hope and show them the path.
Very well said. Thank you. What are what are the biggest barriers you encounter that keep you from doing your job?
I don't have enough time. There's so much work to be done, and I don't have enough resources. And those resources can look like time, my time, staff's time, funding, you name it. There's just there's so much work to be done, and resources are scarce.
What do you like least about your job, and what do you like most about your job?
I think what I like least about the job is, I guess, the paperwork. I said earlier that the paperwork's not that bad, but really, I would prefer not to do the paperwork. I do understand the value of it, but that's probably my least favorite thing to do. That and the frustration that there's not enough resources to accomplish everything that needs to be done, or that we want to be done. And as far as what do I enjoy the most about it, this is a really amazing time to be in the recovery industry and the behavioral health industry. I mean, we've got healthcare reform unfolding, maybe to a lesser degree in the state of Texas, but we're working on that. I think that this whole recovery-oriented system of care movement, really looking at addiction as a chronic illness, and so moving away from that acute care only system towards a chronic care approach. That's and really kind of looking at, so how do we engage someone? How do we do prevention so that we have less people developing the disease of addiction? How do we engage individuals earlier, get them into the crisis and stabilizing interventions that they need, and then support them in long-term recovery? That's an amazing vision, and it's possible, and we're making it happen.
Right. If somebody wanted to learn more, where would you tell them to go?
Well, I guess online is the best place to learn. We've got soberhood.org is a great place to go. If you're interested in seeing what houses recovery homes are certified in the state of Texas, then it's trohn.org, TROHN.org. If you're interested in learning more about the Recovery People Statewide Network, it's recoverypeople.org. We also have a podcast, Recovery People, that can be found on iTunes. And then the Recovery Capital Conference, we created a website for it as well, and it's recoverycapitalconference.org. And we're all over Facebook and Twitter. Our Twitter handle is Recovery Peeps. So we really try to leverage social media and online platforms as much as possible.
And you do an excellent job of that.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Jason. Is there anything else you want to add in closing? That's all the questions I have for you.
Yeah, thanks for this opportunity, and let me know how else I can be of service.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jason. Bye.